Hello, good afternoon. My name is Jerry. So today I want to continue with the Bible study topic that I've been treating for a while now, and I captioned it "Imitating the Ministry of Jesus." And in it, we see we've been discussing how Jesus Christ led the most supernatural ministry that has ever been before, and how he expects his disciples through faith and experience and encounters with him to duplicate all that he did. You know, Jesus Christ expects us to do even greater works than he did because we are many and we have a wider area of coverage, a wider scope of ministry all over the world. He's sending us forth to be his witnesses, those who have seen him and experienced his power and believe in him can also do the things that he did. So for today, we are touching the issue of his power to raise the dead, the power to raise the dead, and our text is taken from John chapter 11. We're going to see John chapter 11 that talked on the case of Lazarus, and Acts chapter 9, and we see the same ministry being duplicated by Peter. In the ministry of Peter, Peter also raised the dead just as Jesus did. So let's go. Our text is taken from John chapter 11. From verse 1, it talked about a man called Lazarus who was sick. He lived in Bethany and he was sick unto death. You know, he died. No, before he died, his sister sent a message to Jesus that Lazarus is sick, that he should come and see if he can, get him well again. But we heard what Jesus Christ said. Christ said something very intriguing there. He said, this sickness of Lazarus is not unto death, but that the Son of Man may be glorified thereby. You know why? What does he mean by that? It is for the glory of God. It's not everything that happens to us that is a product of chance or a repercussion of our negligence or an attack of the devil that God has no control over. Some things are allowed because God wants to use it as a platform through which he can show the world that he is God, that he is in charge of all things, and that he has not lost control. So in John chapter 11, verse 4, we see Jesus saying that the sickness of Lazarus is not unto death, but it is a means by which God will bring glory to the Son of God. So Jesus Christ is telling us that we should not consider everything that happened to us as something that God is not aware of, that God uh, cannot influence or control for the better. There are certain things that, even though they are bad things, they are things that we don't enjoy, we don't want. God allowed it, that through it we'll come to a position, into a place where we experience the power of God. It's an opportunity for us to get to know God better. It is an opportunity for God to show that we are meant to reflect the glory of the Son of God. The glory of the Son of God is one of the ways by which God shows that he is still in charge of the affairs of men in this time. God will allow horrible catastrophes to happen, and we must see it as an opportunity to press into God, so that the juice of God's power will come out of that terrible calamity that befell us, and show to the world that the power of God can still be made manifest, no matter how dark and how horrible our situation or circumstances may be. The darker it is, the more brighter the light of God will shine. So we see every accident, we see every every sickness, every calamity, anything that is out that puts us out of our convenience, anything that is evil, all things by the grace of God we can work together for the good of them that are called according to his purpose. Those upon whom God has poured forth his grace, she'll see, she'll come a to come to terms with the fact that nothing happens by accident to a Christian. God will use it to glorify himself. So stay in there, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, because this sickness is not unto death, or through it the glory of the Son of God will be revealed. So that's what Jesus Christ said. They told him Lazarus is sick, and he said, it is not unto death. It will not end. No matter how bad it gets, the worst thing that can happen to any person is that the person dies. Yes? Yes? That's the worst calamity. That's the worst thing that can happen. But God is telling us here that death is not the end. He can still raise the dead. Yes. He can still bring us out of that impossible situation and stamp upon us the seal that we are his. It's only that which God permits permanently that will happen to us. Yes, so that's it. Jesus Christ says this sickness is not unto death. And also he said something in verse 15, after he has opened up to them that Lazarus is dead. Previously he told them that he's just sleeping, that he's going to wake him up. But they don't really understand that he's not talking about the sleep of rest, but the sleep of death. So later he came out plainly and told them, Lazarus is dead. And he said this, that he is happy that he wasn't there. He didn't go there to heal him, to cure him of his sickness, to pray to get him healed. But Lazarus died. Even though Jesus received the message, Lazarus still died. So what happened? Jesus said this in verse 15, that that I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent that you may believe. Can you imagine what he's saying there? Even his disciples, to a great extent, do not even have the full maturity of faith that he's expecting them to have at that time. So Jesus is saying that the circumstance of Lazarus, the problem with Lazarus now, is an opportunity for him to bring them into a greater faith. Yes, you know, uh, they do not know that he's the Son of God. He's telling them that he's the Son of God, but it's like they've not really come into the full realization of these truths. And it's an opportunity for him to bring them into this revelation. Yes. So Jesus does miracles to help us believe. You're a disciple of Christ, right? So Christ is telling you that this situation that you are in, this thing that is happening, this thing that just happened to you, it's a means by which he has allowed or designed to bring you into a greater faith. So if you can press in and call upon him and keep trusting him through it, you're going to come out better than you were before it happened. So, this was the first time they saw the miracle of the dead being raised. He said that he was happy that he was not there when Lazarus was sick. They've seen that he can heal the sick, right? But they've never seen him raise the dead. But the case of Lazarus was the first time. He told them that he's going to do this. This situation happened because he wants them to believe. Hmm. So this point that I'm raising here is that Jesus Christ wants to bring us into a faith whereby we can be able to do the things that he did. The faith to raise the dead can only come you when you can see Jesus as the resurrection and the life. If you can't see him as a resurrection and life, you may still struggle with this issue. Your faith will not be complete. You may. So, as I was saying, the reason why Jesus Christ decided to take his disciples to experience the resurrection of Lazarus was because he wants them to believe. Yes, so it's a faith that he wants to introduce them into, and that is the kind of faith that can raise the dead. When you see Jesus as a resurrection and the life, when you've encountered the essence of his power over death, over the worst that can happen to any person, you come into a faith that you've never had before. You may have been able to believe Jesus, that he can heal the sick. You may have seen him do some other things for you. But there are dimensions of his power that you can only know when you begin to see him as the resurrection and the life. That is the highest zenith of the manifestation of his power. So the reason why Jesus Christ allowed Lazarus to die was to teach his disciples a new lesson of faith, to bring them into the experience of a greater faith that they've never had before. And um, that faith, that faith sees Jesus as the Son of God who alone is worthy to be glorified. If the glory is shared by men, that faith will not manifest. No, to a great extent, God will not reveal the best of himself to people that are not ready to give him all the glory. You know, the average person wants to be recognized to an extent. They want to kind of let people know that they are something, they are somebody. But this is an attitude that we must deliberately expel from our lives. As long as you want to work for God, as long as you want to serve him in every capacity that he's calling you into, we must understand that it is only the Son of God that should be glorified. In this situation, the glory must go to Jesus. And it's something that we must walk into ourselves. We must discipline ourselves. We must open up our hearts to be able to give all the glory to Jesus. No vain glory should touch our souls. That you may walk in the power of the ages to come. Jesus must be glorified. So when I desire to glorify Jesus, when I desire to seek the the magnification of his name in this situation, I want to see Jesus glorified. It is not just my convenience that I'm seeking, but I want to see Jesus glorified. When this becomes the purpose for which I seek relief, the purpose for which I seek resurrection from the situation that I am in, I'm telling you that the faith that does the impossible, the faith that raises the dead, will come into my heart. So that is what I'm seeking for, and that is what I believe you need. Jesus wants you to imitate his ministry. So for you to do that, you must believe him. And by believing him, I mean you must strive to see him as the one that can do it. You must pray to see him as the one that can raise the dead. Praying, 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 seeking his face, that you may appear in his presence, just as the disciples were in his presence when he called out Lazarus from the grave. When he called out Lazarus from the tomb, they were there. You begin to see yourself in the presence of God while he's doing the impossible. So that is what I want us to take out of this lesson. Jesus Christ said that it is for your sake, for the intent that you may believe. That is why this miracle will happen. So when you come into the faith that reveals Jesus as the glorified Son of God, when you come into that faith that reveals Jesus as the glorified Son of God, who is the resurrection and the life, you begin to do the things that Jesus did. Yes, you will raise the dead just as he raised Lazarus. Mm. So the intent that we may believe is in seeking not for our glory, but for the glory of the Son of God. So if your faith is still being contaminated with that desire for people to recognize you, then then you are not you may not be able to enter into the fullness of the power of God that He wants to use to make all men come to the salvation of Christ. So Jesus is telling you, purge yourself from vainglory, and you will see His power manifest in a greater dimension than you have ever seen before. Yes.